Welcome back to part 2 of Eye Catch Killers with our guest, Jeffrey Morgan. Jeff grew up in Everleigh Street, Redfern, and travelled a well-worn path of getting into trouble with police. When we finished part 1 of Jeff's story, he was in prison serving a lengthy sentence for robbing banks. What Jeff did whilst in prison and how he turned his life around is truly amazing. That's what we're going to talk about in part 2. Jeff, welcome back to Eye Catch Killers.
Thanks.
So, Jeff, you've spent a large portion of your young adulthood in prison, and you're facing another 7 years in prison. What was going through your mind?
At the time, I was just thinking, I can't believe I've just served 5 years and I'm about to go through it. I was thinking I'd get double that this time. And I'd fought the case because there was a possibility that I could actually beat the case. And that was the mentality back then, try and beat everything you possibly could and say nothing, and that mentality. And it got to a point where I nearly got thrown out on the first day, and I was like, oh, wow, this might go down really well for myself. And funnily enough, it didn't. And I look back on it, and maybe it was just a sign.
It might have been the best thing that ever happened to you.
Exactly, because I would have just went back into that same mode and probably never changed. And I think I was at that turning point, and I went back during the trial and I asked my crew, hey, I need your help. And they're like, mate, I don't want to mess myself up for sentence. And for me, I just went, you know what? One of them said yes to myself. The other two were sort of, nah, look, we're going to look after ourselves. And I was like, at that point in time, I was starting to think, that's it, I'm just going to do my own thing. I got found guilty, and just prior to getting found guilty, they found a mobile phone in my cell, and I was taken to segregation or isolation and spent a nice chunk of time there.
Which prison were you in?
Port Phillip Prison in Melbourne at the time, and I went down to there and spent a nice chunk of time. And when I got found guilty, I was in the back of the truck, and it was a late afternoon when I got found guilty. So I got taken back. I was the only one on the truck, and I remember just sitting there and like tears running down my face. And I was like, why are you crying in my head? But I was just like, man, what? Do you want to keep doing this?
Was that an emotion that you're unaccustomed to, like in prison?
Because it was just like the prison thing, it's about chest out, staunch, tough. Wars are going on around yourself. Races are fighting one another. And and I was a delegate at one stage where a lot of that, and I brought a lot of peace within.
Talk to us about that, because you mentioned in part 1 that you were the Aboriginal delegate within the prison. What's that role, and what's that about?
It's about those that are going through a struggle, need to talk to someone. Maybe something's happened within their family or something. You can go on after hours. They've found out that someone's passed on or something like that, and you could go down, or some troubles jumped off, or fights happened in another pod, and I could access myself around all pods within a jail. And it just meant I had a bit of freedom in amongst the incarceration, I suppose.
But it's a bit of a responsibility. Like they're not going to give you that unless the people in there are prepared to listen to you. So what sort of set you apart for that, do you think?
I think trying to bridge the gap between both sides, and I understood that people had a job to do on one side, and we were in there just being held with for our own sentences and purposes for what we'd done, and trying to bridge the gap between both and bring the right...
So between corrective services and the inmates?
Correct. Is that, and saying, hey, this kid needs a phone call because... And just...
right. So corrective services might approach you and say, hey, Jono's going off what that's about, and you go speak to Jono.
Absolutely.
His mum passed away or something
and
like
I could settle it down. And I had probably good communication skills and understanding of the person, and hence what we do as a business now. And I was able to sit down, listen to the person, and show them the benefit and value of acting a particular way. If they wanted to get a phone call or something of that nature, I know you want to call them everything under the sun, but if you do that, more than likely they'll tell you go and stuff it, and you're not going to get a phone call. Just settle yourself down. One, it's going to be better for yourself on a stress level, and being able to bridge that gap, I became really good at it and brought a lot of the races together. You might have heard from Spanion's podcast a couple of weeks ago, where it was full on tension. No one would talk to one another. I spoke to everyone. And
Okay, from different races.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because I had a lot of friends from. I had a huge network, and I had a lot of respect from people from what I'd done and how I did what I did, and I think people just respected that within that, and within the jail system, and that made it an easy in. And I just went, I'm going to talk to everyone, and we're all humans, and I'm just going to make it happen like that. And it started to really bridge a gap when I was there. Or whatever jail I went to. And
Did that make you start to think a bigger picture at that point in time? Look, I'm not totally worthless inmate, that I'm not this piece of shit. I can actually do things that are worthwhile.
Absolutely, because that's what you do. You underneath it all, you think, well, if I'm that person and you're going to look at me like, I'm going to show you that person, and I'm going to be the best at it. I'm going to rub it in your face. That was the mentality, from that side. And you get to a point, I started to see I had good skills at different things. And I was like, athletic, you're driven. And I started to write stuff down, and I journaled quite a lot. That was massive for me. I journal every night. Thoughts, feelings, behaviors, why, and then started to, how did you fix that? And then I realized, focus on the solution, you'll find happiness. Talk about the problem, you'll find pain.
Okay, like what you're talking there is pretty deep from the environment that you're in, to have that ability to sort of look, reflect, and think about where your life is heading and what's happening there.
I think because in there, your life's on the line, and I think if you can bring benefit and value to a conversation, you can shift and change your direction. And I was involved in things in there where, like,
make the right call.
You just all of a sudden you got no say in it. It's just all in. Long Bay, there was an all in brawl between Aboriginal and Asians, as an example. And my brother got stabbed right next to me. So I was literally right next to him. So imagine it could have went into my neck, as an example. So there was always, how could I make a better environment for all of us to get through this and just get out the other side, and what you choose to do then is up to you.
You said something to me in one of our chats that I hadn't thought of it that way, but to me it told me that you have the ability to look at what's going on and the changes within you. That you said about coming out in prison, you've got a jail ego. And I hadn't heard that term before, but I understand my interpretation of it is, you're in that environment, someone has a go at you, you're going to bite back straight away, because that's how you survive in prison. When you get released from prison, you're out on the street and someone says something to you, and your jail ego kicks in and probably leads you down another path of trouble.
It's like you got a problem. I was different, I think, to a lot of people, and I mean that in a nice way, because I wanted to stay out and I wanted to make a lot of money, because as much as it was same. The more money I had, the longer I didn't have to do anything, and I could just survive for that period of time. Over time, I think it was more lavishing, and the ego kicked in, because I was starting to be seen as somebody that was will look up to this person in anything I did throughout that period, and those the crimes that I'd spoken about. And for me, then I was living up to a title to please other people.
That's a danger, isn't it? The standing that you create, that's not the world you want, but it feeds your ego and
crazy, right? And I was never about I'm not an ego person in that sense. But you look back on that, and like anyone that knows me now will say a totally different person, but it was ego driven. It had to be, because why would you do it? I had a name, I had a reputation, and I was going to live up to. I was living up to that reputation, as I said, for other people, costing years of my life, and down the track that ended up, as I said, many years. I lost with my kids that were born. Eventually, I had a boy and a girl, and I think to live up to a title to other people, and as I said, all those crossover transitioning of the crew not standing up for me, having my kids, starting to realize who was really there for myself and who I should be there for. That was where all the shifts started to take place, and I just was like, this, no one cares in this world, and that's the reality of what it is. When I say that, no one cares as to what you choose to do. They don't sit down and say, hey, Morgs, you got more within yourself. I had one or two here and there that would say that. Say, you ever thought about doing other stuff? Because honestly, you'd be really good.
What about the fella that just told you how to present yourself, how to communicate and change your language? Talk us that story, because I think that's an interesting one.
I surrounded myself with a lot of people that weren't like me.
This is in prison.
Yeah. So, and this is where the beauty of that communicator came in. I spoke to everyone, whether you were heavy into getting on drugs every day within jail, or someone who was a CFO of a major organisation. Won't mention what it was, but he had that conversation. He said, "Hey, you're changing your life. You're doing this uni degree. What do you want to do when you get out?" And I said, "Oh, probably, I don't know, train people." Just as an example, that for me was like I was going to be a doctor. And at that point in time, he said, "Can I give you some advice?" And I had this comment, shoulda, coulda, woulda, gonna, hey, what's up, SJ, and all this pig Latin talk. And he said, "Mate, how are you going to do that at a conference? You're going to walk out and go, SJ, everyone, I'll just snake tail your seat." And he goes, "What do you?" And we had that conversation, and I was forever grateful. He taught me lesson after lesson after lesson about just normal life skills that I never had. And, at that point in time, it was just the right point in time and the right person. And I'm forever grateful.
That's interesting, but you also had to have an open mind to it too, because you could have just walked away and gone over the corner of the yard and go, "Hey, check this idiot out. He's trying to tell me how to talk."
And even how he spoke was just calm. Yeah. And he spoke in a way that tapped into my psychic of wanting to be someone else. He could see it within me. He just constantly tapped into myself, got me to cook with him, like just different stuff that I'd never done before. And I was like, wow, there's, real life skills that people just took for granted. You go and cook. None of us could cook. Noodles and some tuna in a bowl, and that was it. So to put some time, energy and effort, which I value, into myself as a person, and say, hey, you want to change, you want to change, here's how you could do so, and here's what I'd recommend doing. And I went down that path and followed every bit of his instructions at that time. And I remember my wife at the time saying, "Mate, you're not going to make anything of it down that path. There's a million personal trainers." And I told him, he said, "Mate, there's no trainer like yourself, I can guarantee it." And went down that path and became very successful really quickly. And
okay, well, let's just wind it back before that, because that path, when you're in prison, you had the opportunity to study, and you did a degree.
So I came out of isolation at Port Phillip Prison, and a bloke said, "You look like a pretty smart fellow." And I was like, the old ego kicked in. Of course I am, but had a giggle about it. And then he said, "Would you like to do a uni degree?" And I was like, "Where?" So
this was a corrective services
in
guy?
Port Phillip. No, I think he was external, from the university.
Okay, but they'd let him into the prisons.
And then we were just walking back on a path to the uni. And I said, "What's available?" He goes, "Here's the list." I had a look. I said, "I'll do nutrition science," and the rest was history. And I said, "Mate, I've never done anything like this. Do I get help?" And he said, "Mate, I'll help you. I'll be the person that helps you. I think you could do it." And I was like, "Mate," he didn't know me from a bar of soap. He just put it out there. And I was at that point where I'd sat for a long period of time in isolation, said, "I'm going to change my life. This is it. I'm not doing anything anymore." And just, mate, when you sit there for 24 hours a day, no TV, just a bed and a toilet and a shower, you start to really dig deep in your thoughts. And same thing, I looked at myself and I'm like, there's people on the end of this stuff that you're doing, and you've got kids. What would you like it if your kids, in our bank robbery, we had a kid within the bank robbery, and we were sledgehammering the safe, and the kid was crying out. So I was sledgehammering the safe at the time, and I dropped it. I said, "Here, take that." And I ran outside and said, "Who's got the kid?" And she said, they didn't want to admit to it. And I said, "Oh, you're not going to be in any trouble or anything." They go, "Me?" And I said, just leave the bank. And the judge actually said, "Mate, for ourselves to stop and pause and go and do that, they must have some form of goodness within themselves."
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it was crazy. Like, you mid-crime, sledgehammering the inside
but
the vault.
You've still got that smidgen of empathy that you understand that there's a kid suffering.
Absolutely. And I said, to the kid, I was saying, "It's only a movie. We're making a movie. Don't worry." And tried to, obviously, I realized the kid was impacted, and I'll start that type of thought process was in my head during that isolation period. I was like, "I'm done. I'm out. I ain't coming back, and I don't care. They didn't have my back. That's who's supposed to be, your loyalty." And And to this day,
The,
I wish
sad,
them all the best.
the sad part where you've got a crew like that if someone's trying to break away, like you're trying to break away, quite often it scares them that someone's going to leave, so they'll try and bring you back down because they haven't got the courage to do, or whether it's courage is the right word, but they're not motivated to do what you want to do. So their world falls apart when the people that they hung around with decide they want a better life.
I think it was more because like that crew, it's so many skills, honestly, and I think it's more just a lack of belief and to
confidence.
The confidence, self-esteem, and they went on to other things. They continued down that pathway, and they just recently got. I'm pretty sure that it was confirmed 16 years with 14 on the bottom, or 14 years with 12 on the bottom, and they're about 5 years into that sentence. And and I still will accept a call, but say talk about nothing but hey, life's good and use your skills right and all of the above. Because I'd love to see them change as well. And anybody, of course you would. And that goes for for me and what we do around mental health and well-being. I'm in a position where I don't have any. There's no sides. There's no nothing. I'll deal with any person, including a police officer, and it's happened many a time along that journey, especially in the last 2 years with what's gone on. And I've had them reach out and say, hey, Jeff, what are your thoughts on this? Because they feel the energy that you spoke about at the start of this podcast. And that's where I'm at within my life. And if people want to judge me on who I used to be, and as much as I talk about it to give you context of what happened, I'm not proud of it. But I want people to know how deeply entrenched I was and how I changed that, and in hope that there's lessons in amongst what we've spoken about.
The world would be a terrible place if people weren't able to change, or you make one mistake and that's you marked for life.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't work. Tell me about the studying in prison. What
crazy?
Like they don't let you out to go to uni, so it's online. So I'll be back. I'm just going. I've got a lecture. Yeah. How's it go?
So, from there, I got sentenced, and Port Phillip was maximum. Went to Barwon Prison, which was maximum there as well, and you get 1 hour a week to download what you need to from the uni. And if you miss one form or one item, the jigsaw just doesn't make sense. Yeah. And all of a sudden you waited an extra
Doing
week.
Online uni courses are hard enough when you're a free man.
Absolutely.
So, I can imagine when you've got 1 hour.
And you just get the papers and that's it. You literally sit down with the bloke who comes in, and I think we get half an hour to an hour. I don't think we got an hour. I think we got half an hour each with that person to sort of get a bit of a summary of what's expected from that, what's come in, and that was it.
Did it stimulate you? Like
absolutely.
After being locked in isolation for 6 months and then having stuff that you,
Absolutely. And I think, it would have been great outside to Google things. And I'm someone who, if you tell me, this particular thing, I'll try and go 10 layers deep and get a really in-depth understanding of what that situation or thing's about. But in there, that was it. You got the one thing, and I think it was so ingrained within myself. Whatever I learned really deeply.
And as you were getting that education, what was it changing? How did you feel about yourself?
I started to grow. And I started to believe, and things were happening within that. And I felt like I was shifting from the talk that was around, the people and the mannerisms, the talk about what they were going to do when they went home, and versus where my head was at, two totally different planes. And I was just committed at that point in time, even in Barwon at maximum security, started that 7-year sentence. I was probably about 2 years in by then, after the remand and whatever else. I was just at a point where I said, I'm going to read books and train and just talk on a positive level. So I surrounded myself with these blokes that, committed fraud, but lived a normal, misappropriated funds. So they lived a normal life.
They were citizens that, they weren't
no, typical.
Not a life of crime. They've made a mistake.
Tell me about business. What mission statement? What's that mean? What terms and conditions, privacy policies? Make sure you got X, Y, and Z together. So I'd write it out and sit down and talk to them and pick their brain, and that just sent me down a path of. I started to change what was concrete within my mind. Here's how you survive. You get up and you grind in a destructive criminality way, versus, hey, you can be constructive in a positive way that doesn't impact the community. And I just went, I'm out.
Did people that know you see that change, see the change evolving, or had you broken up or broken off communication with people on the outside? Was it something more?
No one knew. I don't think no one knew. And everyone just knew the old me, or just the me, I suppose, at that point in time. And even my wife said, that don't go down a personal training path. There's too many trainers. You won't make nothing of it. And having my dad's discipline and structure from years ago, I'm like, we'll watch this. And mate, within like probably 6 months, started to talk at Australian Institute of Fitness and just schools, organisations, corporates, and that just blew out. Within 3 years, I was doing that quite a lot.
And this was after when you got out of prison?
Mate, I worked from 5 a.m. I'd get up at 4. I'd get up and go and do clients from 5 and booked out until 9 p.m. at night. So
tell me about, the day they opened the prison gates. We've all seen it on the movies, and I've seen it in real life. But tell us about that. You walk out and the corrective services say, "See you, Jeff. We don't want to see you again." What happens? And then you turn up and go, "Well, I've got an education now." You reach out to family, friends, or whatever. Do you tell them what you're intending to do?
No, not really. Like, there's an interesting story behind that. Because I'd served the 5 years, I got 7 years with 5 years for the bank robbery prior in New South Wales.
Yeah.
I'd breached my parole. So I wrote to him during my sentence. As I said, I was making all these changes. I said, take ownership. Hey, I'm down here. I've breached my parole. I just can you come and grab me and take me back so I don't go out of custody? So when I got the whole process of going in and out of jail was just a real long, slow process filled with smelly cells, and it's just ugly. We get to the front gate and I'm like, is there police here to take me back to New South Wales? And they're like, what police? And I was like, oh mate, I've written to parole board, and they even said, yeah, we'll be at the gate to grab you. No, I walked out of the jail and I was like, so I was pretty ironic. I'm happy that I'm leaving, but I was actually upset.
full of mixed emotions.
Yeah, because now I have to hand myself in. I'm like, oh, here we go. So I rang the parole board. I said, mate, just hand yourself in, pick a day. I rang Parramatta Police Station and said, hey, I breached my parole, but I've been told by parole to hand myself in on this date. And the sergeant goes, yeah, just come in on that date, then we'll leave it to you. And I'll believe your word when you stick to it. And that was my thing. I had this, my word is my bond mentality at that point in time. And obviously it was something I was going to work on, but I made sure that I showed up and handed myself in on that day, and had to serve another 3 months in the New South Wales prisons. Went in there and it was just chaos, absolute total difference to Melbourne jails.
Talk us about that. What happened?
Melbourne's like more reformative. They got courses. I did a lot of violence prevention, conflict resolution, anger management, all that. I wasn't, as I said, ran out during that bank. It was never about, I'm going to kill you in the bank, give me the money. It was more about, I just need the money and I'm out of here. And versus Sydney, just like, it is an absolute lion's cage. You get thrown in and, mate, from the get-go, chest is out and my partner sitting there, she'll tell you the awareness of myself. I could see something here, literally peripherally.
Actually, during the break, we were actually talking about that, but that comes from that environment. Absolutely.
And that's something that's just stuck with me, I think, and it'll probably stick with me for life. And I heard Spaniards speak about the same. Your awareness and it's like an alarm system, right? You're literally on edge the whole time, and everyone is. Anyone that says they aren't is probably, maybe someone that's come in as a chief financial officer, as I spoke about, that doesn't understand the dynamics of the system. But even then, once they get stood over for some money or something, then they start the same principles.
So was it a fear where you've tidied yourself up and improved yourself in Victoria? Was there a concern that you're going to be, because something could have escalated in that 3 months? It's not about, I just want to do quiet time, because if something
100%.
presented.
And I was at E2 in Sydney because I'd escaped before. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, man, this is going to be crazy because I'm going to do 3 months. And I came from a jail where it was so doing my uni degree, painting, or, like.
You turn up at New South Wales with this nerd from Victoria.
Right. And
Yeah.
the units I was in, they had flowers out the front of them. You cooked in the units.
Yeah.
And I think it really helped me. And I think, people say, oh, they shouldn't get that. And I understand they want us to be punished. I understand from my point of view, and I understand, but I think just going in jail is massive. It just like strips you back.
Yeah.
They strip you back, and you're broken down on an esteem level.
It's you've touched on something that's really interesting because you've got the perspectives from a prison, whether it doesn't matter which states it's in, but a prison where there's a little bit of humanity to a prison where it's a lion's cage.
Total difference. And you could walk around anywhere in the Victorian prison, like right around the walls, and no one's there, versus Sydney, like, mate, if you went anywhere, you're with a guard or you're on camera in a hallway that's automated. So
and if you throw yourself into that environment, if you were in the New South Wales environment or that type of prison for that period of time, there's a good chance that you would have come out angry and ready to roll again.
If I did, and I didn't want to transfer back to Sydney. Like, one of the boys actually transferred back. I was like, I'm not transferring back because it's just that same. There's that mentality around it all. So I was just like, no, I'm going to stay here and see if I can change and stay away from everybody and see if that happens. And for me, I think the length of the sentence, the things that were available to myself, if you take those up and you really want to access that, they help create change. Sydney doesn't have that. It just doesn't. And you're sending blokes out that go in, hard, coming out like absolutely tough and strong and that's going to end up bad for I know the community wants justice and all of that. But just locking someone arm, and if you understand what you go through, I think that's more than enough for a period of time to break an individual down. And the
reality is that what you create in the prisons, when the gates open, they're going to be part of society. So what do you want to release from the prison into society?
And they've got to think about, and that's where that restorative justice really has to think about that and take that on board, because if you don't, you're going to get people that come out, and I think even more so, and I don't know how the rates of crimes have gone, but violent crimes, and whether that's actually escalated because the prisons are getting harsher and harsher and harsher. So I'm expecting that side of things. Maybe the statistics have gone up.
That would be interesting to look at. But you're the classic example of that. You can use that time, and not everyone can do it. Like, let's not underplay what you've done there. It's a tough thing to turn your life around, but you're given that opportunity. So when you survived the 3 months in New South Wales without getting yourself into trouble, or
the funniest thing was the night I get there, then all of a sudden there's going to be this big drama between two groups, and I'm one of those groups, and I'm like, oh, man, this is headache.
I don't need this.
Next morning, I'm not shitting you. I was like, here we go. I've got nothing on me either, mind you. So they're going to let us out. And like when you get let out, it's like the races. Everyone's banging and it's on, right? And I'm thinking, here we go. This is going to jump off. All right, get yourself ready. Tough mentality. Yeah. And the officer goes, Morgan. He goes, mate, pack your bags. You're going next door. And I was like, next door to the pod? And he goes, nah, to Old Silverwater. You're only serving parole. We can't keep you here. And I said, I'm 82. And he goes, yeah, we know. You've been classoed over there, mate. And I was like, I'm out. See you later. And it was sort of a bit of a sign that all the work that I put in Melbourne actually had paid off. Someone looking over saying, we don't need you to be here. I don't know what happened that day either, mind you. And nor did I even ask. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to walk and not look back.
Yeah, I can just the way you described it, I can just imagine you've tidied yourself up, you've prepared yourself, and then you're going to get dragged back in. And you could have got dragged back in, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking about what we're talking now.
Absolutely. And you got to understand, if I'd sit there and go, I'm not I'm not in it. Like, mate, you might have four blokes on top of you, and whether you make it even back outside or you end up disabled or something, who knows?
Yeah.
So it was like a godsend. He tapped on that. And
maybe it's karma. Maybe
yeah,
it's karma.
like, and I was just like, I'm out. See you later, and went next door, and I was just happy. It made my day. I was like,
dancing on your way out.
And the rest was just, I think on old Silverwater, I took up every opportunity. But people got to realise they open up. And it's only because of the size of the classrooms, and so they might have 5 spaces, 10 spaces max, and people just don't get the opportunity. They're booked out, and some people are booked in before them, and you could sit 3 years before you get into a course.
Get a chance.
Yeah,
get a chance. Well, it makes sense to create those opportunities, and they open the world up through education. So you've got out of prison this time.
Yep.
You're going to start a business. You're going to earn a dollar. You're going to become a citizen.
Yep.
Talk us through that.
I don't even know how I ended up in a position, but I started personal training again, and I always sort of did it on the side as hired my money type thing. And I kicked off this time and just went, that's it, I'm going to go down that path, and had the wife's voice in the background. You're not going to do anything with it. Next thing, I was booked out making huge money, and to me, it wasn't about the money. It was just about making sure I was busy. I was busy from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I went out with a friend's birthday to Ivy, and I actually fell asleep while the club was jumping.
Yeah.
And I went, mate, this life's gone. I'm out. And he's like, they woke me up, and I actually thought a fight was happening. I was like, what's happening? And they're like, no, mate, you fell asleep. And I was like, oh, man, tired, sorry. And he said, mate, go home and have a sleep it off. Take it easy. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And I realised at that point in time, my life had changed. I was happy. I didn't need to party. I didn't need to impress anybody. I didn't need any amount of money. But I was working so hard just to distract myself and put new habits within my brain and concrete that until it becomes something that I'd never ever look back. No matter how much money I had, I didn't have. I was never going to be tempted, to do something that I used to do before. And I was proud of that person that I'd become. And I was a father at that point in time.
How old were your kids at that time?
Oh, my son would have been probably, I think, about 5.
Yeah.
And my daughter about 7.
Yeah.
And I'd missed all those years. Like, I'd missed, both parents passed away whilst I was in custody. I missed the formative years of my kids' life.
Yeah.
My own fault. And it's just crazy. And I never felt proud about that, part of life at all.
I can't imagine what it's like when you're locked up and you're missing stuff like that, and your parents passing away and everything.
You block it out. You've got
to survive, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, the awareness that alarm system was going off constantly. You don't get much time until you sit down in your cell, and you might have a little cry to yourself.
Yeah.
And then I started to realise, mate, a real man looks after his kids, and I'd have that conversation with blokes and say, mate, this is what I want to do. I'm not a good father.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, wow. Because they'd never look at it like that.
Yeah.
I'm making money and my kid's wearing the best clothes or I said, but you're here, brother.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. And we'd have that conversation, but on a good level. And people started to shift and say, wow, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
And I just got to a point where I was comfortable and happy to have that conversation. And people respected me enough to just say, mate, this bloke's always been at the top of the game within this field, and he's chosen this pathway. What's he doing and why he's doing that? And that helped a lot of other people. I get messages to this day, hey, Jeff, just so you know, you helped me change my life. I got off drugs and I look after my 2 kids now and I work. I got a job just as a labourer.
How cool's that?
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't say just as a labourer, just say as a proud father, brother, and be happy around what you did. And we actually were at Jubelin Festival the other day, and
I was there too.
Yeah. And we bumped into a bloke, and he said, "Mate, you inspired me to change." And mate, this bloke served a long sentence, probably down the path of what you actually. I don't know the details to his crime, but same thing he said, mate, and he was well entrenched. Same thing, I seen his progression through the boys' homes and then into a position we end up charged for a particular thing. And he just, same thing, he just said, mate, seeing you do it gave me the belief that I can do it. And he had his 2 kids there, and he's married, and he's like, that life's gone.
Well, that's where I think your story is so important, because you've walked the walk. You've been on the side of the criminal and the gangster lifestyle, and doing the time, and you've totally turned it round. When you're out and you've got your business, you're working from 5 till 9 each day, and trying to make a start of things.
Yep.
Did you hit hurdles? Did people come back and go, "Well, you're an ex-crim"? Were you confronted with that?
No, so I was very lucky that I got into a place where I didn't really talk about it. I just sort of put the resume forward, and I looked super fit. I just got out of jail and trained every day.
I can say, like, I can tell, as you can tell a cop, I can tell someone that's been inside or whatever. Yeah. But I must admit, you haven't. You look healthy. You haven't got that sort of anger or intensity. And that might be because you've turned yourself around.
Absolutely. I think, like, if you looked at me back then, even then, I was always that person. And I think my mother's nature came through. I lived with my mother quite a lot, and she was, I wouldn't say I was a mummy's boy, but I respected my mother and sort of listened to a lot of the lessons that she taught me. And I think there's bits and pieces of my father and mother that made me the person I am. Yeah. Father was a very angry man, and I was bashed quite a lot as a kid. Yeah. And I think that was just the German sort of Austrian type strong mentality around, this is the discipline.
And it was a different world, and it
was totally normal back then. Yeah. Like a lot of kids, you get kicked up the butt if you were home late. He was a bit more than that, and I think that made me very tough. So that, all these lessons, the toughness when I went to jail, I was like, mate, you could hit me all you want, it wouldn't.
You're not going to break me.
No problem. So those qualities, I used those to change my life as much as I used them during the life that I was down a destructive path.
Yeah. And with that, with your newfound life, you had some setbacks because it was your brother, and we'll talk about like the mental health and the fitness, what you're doing with your business, but you had some setbacks when you were out, because
absolutely,
I see people that have done similar things as yourself, as in trying to get their life back in direction. Yep. Sadly, sometimes when they hit a hurdle, they revert back to kind and just go, it's too much, I'm going back to what I'm good at.
Absolutely.
So and I know it's a painful subject, but it's a subject that I've spoken to you about. Are you happy to talk about your brother?
Yeah. Like, I think when you lose someone and you're working within the field that you're meant to be doing and helping that person, and they can commit suicide, I think that to me was a game changer. Like, it's like you can't even do what you say you do. You reckon you're good at what you did, and
so you're out helping all these people, and healthy lifestyle and
absolutely
positive outlook, and your brother's killed himself.
Absolutely. And we do, like, everyone has that mentality, because I was a trainer nutritionist, that I'm a trainer. We did so much for me to be as strong as I was within there, and really be seen as someone who was strong and had great values, morals, and belief in that world. I had to be able to transition that into a point where I look back on it and say, hey, you had all these skills, but you never helped your own family. You're not good at what you do. And I went through a real mental battle at that stage, and I kept doing what I was doing. And then I had a bunch of money. I went, I'm going to sit back and just sort of think about what I want to do. And then I came out and said, nah, mate, I'm going to commit to, you've lost both parents to cancer, brother, sister, suicide, another brother to a preventable health issue. And your journey's set in stone, and continue the path that you're on. And from that point, I haven't looked back. And I had battles. You asked me before about obstacles. I also had, when I came home, I was going really well. I had that 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. And I had the boys reach out, the same crew, and come out. And I was like, look, mate, I'm not interested in whatever else. And at one point in time, I ended up just saying yes. Went out, done something. Lucky it was more minor than it was major. I was, mate, as I said, they end up with, I think it was 14 years, 12 on the bottom, was 16 with 14.
You got to go drag down with them.
Mate, and if I got 16 years from the time, and 5 years into my sentence now, I'm 48. I'd still have, 7 years to go. I'd get out, 55, and I knew there was a point in time the next sentence was going to be big, and I was just getting more and more confident around this pathway, and whether someone ends up dead on that side or like, it was all going through my head. That's someone's kid, someone's family. So, I was like, I can't do it no more. I'm out.
So with the business that you've got running now, it's very successful.
Absolutely. So
talk us about the business and what you're doing, because I think for people to fully appreciate the big turnaround, we've heard the past that you've come from, but what you're actually doing now and some of the things that you're achieved. And
so it's been I've been home 11 years. I committed the crime about a year after I come home, and then I dragged it out because I wanted to show I was of good behaviour. I had been for a year, so I had a huge belief in continue that path. Dragged that out. I think it was about 3 or 4 years, and got sentenced. So it was, but my last interaction with police in that sense was about 10 years ago, and where I went out and committed a crime as such. And so I was went down the pathway, recognised what I was good at, that communication I had with people whilst I was in there. Some of those people were at the highest level of just anger. Yeah. And they wanted to, smash or stab someone on the other side. And I was able to then talk to them and get them to a position where they actually hung out and played cards in the yards later on. And I went, if you can do that, you could do that as a job. Train a nutritionist, put that together, mental health and wellbeing consultancy. And over the last 10 years, it's been absolutely awesome. I was a trainer more so for a long period of time. We did 87 talks in 1 year. And I went, wow, I could actually do something with this if I went down the path of this and this alone. And that's what I chose to do after my brother's suicide. And it's been absolutely awesome. We travel out, we work with corporates, schools, Aboriginal communities, health services, or communities in general, I should say. Juvenile justice, corrective services, individuals, sporting teams, you name it, we've done it.
And the type of service you're promoting, healthy lifestyle and mental wellbeing?
Yeah, so it's more around mental health and wellbeing. So we do habits and rituals workshops. So everything that I had was habit and ritual, destructive at that. And every human being has, whether it's procrastination, whether it's not sticking to your own word, whether it's you're lying to yourself to the point where your self-esteem, self-worth, self-love takes a huge hit. All those components of what I've just spoken about get put into 85 different modules. We go out, run workshops based around what the organisation identifies. Hey, we're lacking X, Y, and Z. We plug that in, and then we do the aftercare with them once we've left as well via our own app. And we've put huge hours.
So you got this online and
online.
If people are looking for it? Because I think if people have heard your story, they'd be curious.
Yeah, so we're the lifestyle program. You can look me up under Jeffrey, www.jeffreymorgan, JEFFREY, morgan.com.au. And we do anything. We work with kids, as I said, even with police officers, community projects.
Even with police.
Yeah. Look, I've got to a point where I've just moved on, and if someone wants to judge me from either side, I'm not too
No, well, you told me a nice story about the police officer. We won't go into it, but reaching out to you and asking for help, and I think that's really good. It's you get to see that side, they get to see your side, and
it's crazy.
It makes a difference, doesn't it? It's just breaking down those barriers.
The last 2 years, and obviously people's choices and decisions have put them in particular positions, and they've reached out and had conversations, and the fact that they can see me and see the actions that I've taken shows me that I've come full circle. And I'm there we're a mental health and wellbeing service, and we don't discriminate and say, hey, you're a police officer, get out of here.
Yeah.
I want people to live their best life. That's someone's mother, brother, sister, lover, whatever it may be. So for us, that's important that person lives their best quality of life. And we use 3 pillars: the happiness, health, or quality of life, and success, determined by them, guided by us. And that allows them to really find what's important to them within their life, their own vision, purpose, and why. And then we make sure that we hold them accountable to the words that come out of their mouth. And as I said, I'm not here to discriminate against them. Yeah. And if I've truly changed my life, I don't have...
You haven't even got it in you.
No, I don't look at I need the criminal code and don't talk to him or do X. I don't want to know what you do if you're on that side.
Yeah.
And that's a message for any bloke from the past. Don't tell me. I don't need to know. I don't want to know, because if you're under surveillance and you tell me,
I don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't want to be in that compromise. And same thing on the other side. I don't care if people say, hey, you're working with police. We're changing kids' lives and hopefully sending them on a different pathway.
That ripple effect, isn't it? You change one person's life, or just change their outlook on life and the difference that can make.
Absolutely. And my nephews, my cousins have seen the change from myself, and that it was a badge of honor for them to go to jail. Now they're starting to work, and they say, Uncle, I got a job in construction.
Yeah.
To cool. me, I said, you've drawn a line in the sand, and that's a leader. That's a man.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up. Don't worry about what anyone says about you. And I had a million people say a million things about me, but I always focused on myself, whether I was in that world or in this world. And no one will ever change who I know who I am. And once you believe, and I've got that belief now, whereas I didn't as a kid. It was just, and in the nicest way, whether you're getting beaten by the police at that time, you're committing crimes, getting locked. There was all these just destructive hits of your own self-esteem, self-worth, my parents not being there, all of the above. And you just understand when someone's down here, you see it. I see it now from the other side, where I see the individuals who work, have a great life, police officers, but they're down here.
Yeah.
And as a business, we don't want that person to be there. We want them to be at their best, and find a better life for themselves, determined.
Well, you are the classic example of someone that can turn it around. You even hosted your own TV show. Talk us about that.
Yeah, so
NITV.
I was about 3 years home, and obviously I took to social media and did my best at that point in time. And they reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to do a show. What are your thought processes around?" I lied. I was training someone who said, "Hey, I know somebody who's with NITV, and I'd love for you to train them." Yeah. We had a conversation. He goes, "Mate, the way you talk, and would you do a show?" And I was like, "For sure." And that's how it sort of came about. And that we shot 10 episodes. I'd been home about 3 years, and just these different things that will happen within your life. Different
life experiences that you're getting.
Full circle. And the unfortunate thing, as I said to you earlier, both parents never saw me live the life that they had taught me, the values, and they'd passed on and I was in custody for both. But, I always look back and just think, their spirit, and I was taught this by my grandmother. Your spirit will always. I said, "Oh, I'm sad to see you go." To my grandmother, she had emphysema, and she has. I'm not going. I'm always going to be on earth. And I said, "How do you figure that?" She has, "Everything I've taught you, the knowledge I've passed on, will live within yourself, in spirit, and you'll pass it on to somebody else." She made me go to school. She was very staunch about keeping me out of trouble and stuff of that nature. So that lived with me forever. And
well, that's a good thing to hold on to, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And when you say your parents didn't get to see you living your good life now, but it's the little things, the values that they instilled in you, that's why you're living your good life. Because if they didn't, it's
and the spirit still lives on within myself. And they taught me to respect every human. And, it's weird because the values are there now, but why weren't they there earlier? And it's, I'm still on a little bit of a journey in that sense, where sometimes I go back and say, why weren't they there at that point in time, even though they taught you? And
well, let's take it back to that clip where you're walking through Everleigh Street talking about, it was tough, but I'm glad I came through here. You couldn't be doing what you're doing now if you hadn't lived the experiences you're living, because it's you're coming through, you're talking with wisdom.
Absolutely. I think 93, I decided to get out of Everleigh Street, Redfern.
Yeah.
We lived at 88. And for me, I just went, if I stay here, I'll end up dead. I seen the destruction of drugs within the community. And like a lot of the young kids I grew up with had died at 14, 15 from drug overdoses. And like my partner before that, she was one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen. And she unfortunately had modeling contracts and then went down a path of destruction. It's still to this day. Yeah. And I just seen the destruction behind her. So I never went that way as well. And I just, obviously went into survival mode and stayed away from that in a sense. But 1993, I walk away, and I just at that point in time, I think that's when the change started to occur, because to step out of a community that had your back, and I had their back against.
Would have been scary for you,
mate. We had riots, right, as you
Yeah.
know, with the police at the time, running riots every time they drove down, and it was back and forth. But like, they had my back, so that was my family, and I would have given hell on earth.
Yeah.
And I stepped up and moved out of the block, because I just recognised I wasn't going to change if I wanted to really change. And
Yeah.
it's obviously was in myself. So probably 93, I started to change. 2010 years later, I'd made the step and never looked back.
Yeah, well, you're a credit to yourself, your family, and your community, how you've turned things around.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it.
I mean it. Like when I said people that I respect were telling me, "Hey, you got to check this guy out." And, that means something.
Yeah,
You are also the world's fittest human being. In doing my research, because we always prepare, I looked at a clip where you're doing some stuff. What the hell?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
We got in there.
Tell me about the clip online, and I encourage anyone to look at it if you think you're fit, because I thought I was fit, and I looked at some of the shit you were doing. I'm Jesus.
Right. You could maybe put the link in the comment section or description section below of that video, but in general, I think it just stems from being in there, and your mental health, your self-esteem. I think if
plays a big part, doesn't it?
If I didn't train, I think I would have done something bad, and a lot of blokes did. You know, whether they took the path of drugs, some didn't make it out of jail, and it happened quite a lot. And I was a delegate, remember, so I had to go down and identify, and it was just crazy. Some of that stuff was very traumatizing, I think. But you look back on it. A lot of the stuff we just did in the yard. We'd get together and we'd come up with these crazy challenges. And, way back when we didn't see any of those videos, let's do a chin up and clap at the top, and let's do a chin up and clap, and then clap under your feet. And it was just, it was boredom.
It is. It's out there, but
and that became so entrenched as a normal workout that our warm up was someone's workout. And to this day, I'd pass that on to anybody. Make sure you keep yourself as healthy as you possibly can, because this bad boy, especially in this current time, and I think it's going to be ongoing. I cannot recommend it enough to yourself. Exercise. Trainers don't get enough, really good trainers don't get enough credit as to how much change they affect, because it actually could change or save a life. Obviously, if you're a doctor, you looked at it in this high regard, but trainers really tap into the good ones, tap into the individual, what's going on in the background, why is that habit happening, what sets you off to binge eat, my partner, my workplace, my whatever it may be. And if they can, someone like myself, that's what I tapped into as an individual. And the same principle, I used all the skills I learned in jail. What was the benefit and value to that bloke who was wanting to put a knife through somebody? How could I make him see it in a different light? You got mum or someone at home? Mate, you won't see them for X amount of time. They're not worth that. We can sort this out.
Little things like that.
And I just use the same sort of techniques with people and individuals here, obviously on a different level.
Well, obviously people are resonating with the message that you put out there, and even in our conversations just talking about fitness, I like the fact that there's a practical approach. It's simple what you're talking about, the 80-20. Like if you're going to train like an Olympic athlete every single day, you're going to burn out. But you've got to reward yourself, little things like that, little life lessons that,
You can't run a marathon at full pace, and life's a marathon. And that's what I say to people. You look at the Melbourne Cup, the horse that sprints out ends up finishing last. So do yourself a favour. Find things that are enjoyable, sustainable and maintainable to yourself. Those three things, and do them on a regular basis. And don't compare yourself to anyone but yourself and the day before. And each day show up, make your word your bond, because once you lie to yourself more often than not, what you're going to do is then start to believe yourself. And if you believe that you can't do it, what you're actually telling yourself that you're going to do, you're going to then knock into your own self-confidence, and you just won't believe anything that comes out of your own mouth. And you only have what I call conversations of convenience, where you just say, hey guys, I'm going to start training next week. and it's just because you're in the backyard having a barbecue with someone. Do yourself a favor, be a person of your word, stick to that, but make your word your bond, and watch your life go 360 no matter what position you're in, whether you're on the criminality side or just out here wanting to live a good life around your quality of life. So.
Well, Jeff, simple life advice from Jeff Morgan, and I like what you're saying there, and you're a credit to yourself and turning your life around. There's something that there is a vibe that you give out, a real Zen-like feeling. I can see why people gravitate towards you, and that comes from the life experience. And you could be a completely different person. You've made a choice in life, and that's why I really enjoy doing these podcasts, sitting down with people like you. That if we're going to talk crime, and that's what I Catch Killers was about, we've got to look at it from all sides. And you've given us a really in-depth view of it. So I hope if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way of reaching out to you?
Definitely via the website. Just go to www.jeffreymorgan.com.au and just hit us up via the contact form. And as I said, we do everything from corporate wellness, schools, leadership programs, or kids leadership programs for communities as well. Juvenile justice, corrective services, and I think I've left something out there, but sporting teams, we've done NRL teams, teams around the country, and individuals. I could see the partner in the background. She's like, individuals, and individuals who can access the app. I've put everything that was in my head and how I changed my life. And before people go, I'm not a criminal, so I don't need to learn that stuff. It's about the habits that you carry, and whether it is destructive and negative towards what you tell yourself. And one of the first things we do within these workshops is say, what makes you happy? What's your success look like? What's your quality of life look like, right? Yeah. They write it out. Write out your weekly planner. What's your week look like this week? So you would have had maybe, all your meetings that you might have had as an example. And I said, where's all this within your weekly planner? And people are like, it's not. And I'm like, you tell me whether you're existing or living. And they go, I'm existing. I said, get all that and put it into that just as a first. So there's 85 different modules, and that's just a little pathway that you can change on a neurological level to take you from a negative to a positive. And by all means, reach out, have the conversation. Who I was then, if you want to judge me on that, that's on you. And I understand and respect that, but understand that I'm purely driven towards, and this is for people that watch, towards helping people. And, I'm a better person, and I'm proud of that as well.
Well, so you should be proud, and I hope everything that comes your way is the amount of lives that you've changed. And we often talk about balancing the ledger, and I know that was part of what you said, the things that you've done in the past. You're putting back to the community big time, brother. So be proud of what you're doing, and stay strong.
Mate, and if there's anyone that watches this and feels that I can help in any way, shape or form, victims of crime, I'm more than happy to help out and reach out. And and I'm not here to say I don't work with police on the level of helping people create a better life and less stress after they've been a victim of a crime, as an example, or young kids going down the path that are deemed at risk. Well, that's what we do, and I'm more than happy to help out, because when I say help out in the regard of just helping people change their lives. Police investigations. I don't want nothing to do with anything.
We'll keep you out of that world. Let's stay out of it.
Absolutely.
Look, you're ex, I'm ex. I'm not a cop. You're not doing what you're doing. So we'll stay out of that. But all the best for you, Jeff, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate your time.
Cheers.